线长山又高，处处港口都险要。
Today, I am extremely honored to have on Strait Talk someone who is very well known not just over here in Taiwan, but on the Chinese mainland as well. Someone who I would say is one of the most vocal advocates of Chinese reunification on the ground here in Taiwan from my generation. Someone who I've followed for over 10 years now. You may not know him yet, but my job today is to introduce him to the English-speaking world by having him talk about his political journey over the years. Without further ado, please let me introduce you all to Mr. Wang Ping-chung. Bingzhong, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join the show. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thank you. This is really my pleasure to be here to have this interview with you and talk to you and our audience.
My pleasure to host you, and hopefully the audience will feel the same. So could you please briefly introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, I was born in 1987, and this year symbolized a beginning of so-called Taiwan's democratization, or you can say liberation, because in this year, so-called martial law was suspended. And then this is also a beginning for both sides of the Taiwan Straits people began to meet with each other, because before 1987, people in Taiwan could not meet any person from Chinese mainland. So after that, many veterans from Chinese mainland brought by KMT since 1949 to Taiwan, they could come back to their home. So I think the year of my birth is a symbol of the beginning of the new era for cross-strait relations. And then for me, my family are so-called 本省人, local Taiwanese people in Taiwan, because my ancestors came to the island of Taiwan about the mid-17th century. So more than 300 years, my family has become inhabitants in Taiwan for so long, So many people will say we need to identify ourselves as Taiwanese instead of Chinese. But I don't think so. I think both Taiwanese and Chinese entity should not be excluded with each other. And this is really complex question for me to think about for so long time. And now I am maybe you can say cyber warrior or internet influencer for promotion of reunification. Maybe we can talk more about that.
Wow, I can already tell that this will be a very fruitful discussion. But before we continue, I want to take a brief moment to thank all of my viewers and patrons. Each share and like helps the show grow, as does each penny donated to Strait Talk. It is each and every one of you that keeps the show running. Now, I would like to shout out my upper-level patrons: Alvin Zhao, Wang Yijing, Michael Kim, Victor, CD14039, Jim Fox, Kabasa Fogo, SCY, Maddie Roxy, Thomas Siegel, Zhang Wei, Dolores Austin T, and Daniel Sun. Thank you all for going above and beyond with your support. Okay, so a lot of people in the West who consider themselves pro-China like to draw a comparison between Taipei's relationship with Washington and Israel's relationship with America. In other words, they think the U.S. props up Taipei the same way it props up Tel Aviv with unconditional support. But the reality is pretty different. Whatever support the U.S. has given Taiwan over the years has always come with strings attached. And in recent times, it's only gotten shakier. Under President Trump especially, Washington's approach looks a lot less like protecting Taiwan and more like squeezing it for whatever it can get, forcing TSMC to relocate to Arizona, giving us a bad deal with tariffs, pushing Taipei to buy overpriced and outdated weapons, as usual, all while gearing the island for a war with the mainland that everyone knows the U.S. itself has no intention of fighting, and everybody in Taiwan knows we cannot win. So I want to kick off our conversation today by breaking this down. So my first question to you, Bingzhong, is this. during Trump's first presidency, we saw he had a pretty decent relationship with our former leader, Tsai Ing-wen. Back then, many supporters of the DPP thought of Trump as pro-Taiwan. But today, it seems like Trump almost views our current leader, Lai Ching-te, as a nuisance. Why is this?
Yeah, just like what you said, I remembered about 2020, most of DPP supporters were also supporters for Donald Trump, and they hated Biden at that time. But today, many DPP supporters will think of Trump as seems like not pro-Taiwan as before. And also, just like what you said, many people will think Trump thinks of Lai Ching-te as a nuisance. So why? I think although Trump's attitude toward Taiwan, especially present attitude toward Taiwan, seems different from his first presidency, the very fact has never changed that his thinking of Taiwan as a chess piece for the United States to counter China. And the difference is in his first presidency, he used to adopt so-called maximum pressure strategy against Beijing. So Taiwan question seemed a useful tool for him to pressure Beijing. So at that time, Tsai Ing-wen's separatism seemed useful and just accorded with Donald Trump's policy at the time. But gradually, Donald Trump felt that the strategy seemed ineffective for the United States to deal with Beijing gradually. For example, Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in 2022, it not only failed to force Beijing to give up the red line, but also just provided an opportunity for Beijing to normalize their military movements around the island of Taiwan. And also, there have been so many conflicts around the world, such as Israel, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine, and India, Pakistan. So many conflicts compelled the United States to give up, to be involved into so many conflicts, and the United States is unable to handle so many wars simultaneously. So for Donald Trump, he should adjust the relations with Beijing. And it's better for him to bargain with rather than to combat with Beijing. So today, it's more important for him to handle the Taiwan question carefully. And maybe you can say to rein in Taiwan separatism, to keep Lai Ching-te, the current Taiwanese leader, on a short leash. So that's why I think he thinks of Lai Ching-te as a nuisance, as a troublemaker. And also, in addition, remember, when the United States can show their support for Taiwan independence strongly, when they should adopt so-called maximum pressure strategy against Beijing, they can also demonstrate their ability to control Taiwan independence for Beijing. On the other hand, to create bargaining chips with Beijing. So it's why Trump seems different from his first presidency.
It seems to me like Taiwan separatists have always been in the position from the U.S. as dogs on a leash. If they want to apply pressure to Beijing, they loosen up the leash to let the dogs charge forward. But then when they get what they want from Beijing, they're like, okay, come back.
Yes.
You only bite when we tell you to.
Yeah.
So although both Tsai Ing-wen and Lai Ching-te are from the Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, it seems that there are qualitative differences between the two. This applies to how they handle Taiwan's internal politics as well as Taipei's relationship with Beijing. Tsai Ing-wen was far less confrontational with Beijing, even when she did have some separatist rhetoric. So could you please explain how the two differ and perhaps why? I know one of the reasons is Tsai Ing-wen is the protege of Li Denghui, who was very good at manipulating power struggles. Lai Ching-te does not have that skill.
Yep. Tsai Ing-wen and Lai Ching-te are quite different in terms of their career background and the situation they faced when they became a president. In terms of career background, Tsai Ing-wen had served as an advisor on cross-strait relations and international affairs for several years before she became a president. And Lai Ching-te has no experience in international affairs, cross-strait relations, but only in Taiwan's domestic politics and those political campaigns. And also, the situation they faced when they became a president are totally different. During Tsai Ing-wen's presidency, about 2016 to 2024, the DPP had always kept majority in Taiwan's legislature. But Lai Ching-te, when he won the presidential campaign in 2024, he won only about 40%, so less than half of the votes. And also the DPP lost majority in Taiwan's legislature. So Lai Ching-te seems to be more rough and impatient because he's anxious for defeating all of the Taiwanese opposition, And that's a shame for him because he won less than half of the votes. And for Tsai Ing-wen, she's skilled in promoting Taiwan independence or Taiwanese separatism in the name of many beautiful and progressive values such as human rights, democracy, liberty, or gender equality, and environment protection, and so on. And those beautiful slogans and so-called progressive values are always charming, always beautiful to median voters. So young people especially like Tsai Ing-wen rather than Lai Ching-te. And also for their promotion for Taiwan independence, Tsai Ing-wen understands very well how to modify Taiwan independence by replacing it with the slogan, maintaining the status quo. But Lai Ching-te pays too much attention to Taiwan defense resilience, and which just reminds the Taiwan society of the terror of war. So, for example, young people would like to pay lip service to defense, to fighting against Beijing. But indeed, if you force them to go to the battlefield or just military service extension, almost they opposed it. So about 2022, the DPP authorities extended the original military service. The original military service only for 4 months. But after 2022, the DPP authorities extended it into 1 year. And most of the young people opposed it very much. So that's one of the reasons why Lai Ching-te lost many young voters. So that's a big difference between two leaders. And also besides, Tsai Ing-wen understands very well how to always keep in concord, in accordance with the United States needs. The United States pace of counter-China strategy. Tsai Ing-wen knows very well. Sometimes I need to be offensive. Sometimes I need to be more conservative. She knows how to handle, how to change the tempo. But Lai Ching-te only cares about his needs, cares about how to defeat the opposition power by inciting Taiwan independence, and regardless of the shift of the United States about the United States' new strategy against or the new approach to Beijing.
Well, that's a very good answer. It covers all of the bases I can think of. Another thing is Tsai Ing-wen actually worked within the KMT bureaucracy early on in her career. Lai Ching-te has no experience working with the opposition because when he was mayor of Tainan, everyone was DPP.
And he got his power only by winning the campaigns.
Yes.
Yeah. So he paid much attention to seizing power. He just knows how to fight against the opposition and knows nothing about cross-strait or international affairs.
Exactly. And I think a good representation of the shifting attitudes of the United States towards Taiwan could be seen in the recent tariff negotiations. Taiwan got a pretty bad deal compared to South Korea and Japan. And oftentimes people in Taiwan like to compare ourselves to South Korea and Japan as reliable United States allies in the region. And this is despite complying with U.S. demands to set up TSMC fabrication plants in Arizona. So to you, what does this signal about the relationship between Taiwan and the U.S., as well as the relations between Beijing and Washington?
I think Trump's treatment for Taiwan in recent times, especially in recent tariff negotiations, signals his eagerness for selling out Taiwan. How to say that? I think Donald Trump thinks that Taiwan may be reunified by Beijing unavoidably in the near future. So it's better for him to bargain with Beijing rather than to combat with Beijing.
So like a soft landing rather than a crash.
Yes. And because the United States is going to lose Taiwan in the near future. So it's more important for him to suck Taiwan dry as possible as they can to extract any valuable things in Taiwan as soon as possible. So the United States demand for TSMC to increase investments into the United States is an explicit example. As TSMC's manufacturer of advanced chips is so crucial to the United States, so it's more important for America to move the TSMC instead of leave it in Taiwan, So although some Taiwanese politicians argue that we can gain more the United States assistance in defense by sacrificing TSMC, I think it's totally ridiculous because without TSMC, Taiwan is invaluable in Donald Trump's eyes. So furthermore, with the weapon of tariff, the United States just can compel Taiwan to sacrifice more for the United States. And so-called the implied commitment to come to Taiwan's defense is also another bargaining chips for the United States to demand Taiwan more, and especially expensive military procurements. And in short, Trump believes that the commitment to come to Taiwan's defense is not essential for the United States' strategy against Beijing. He told the media for several times that he refused to guarantee Taiwan's defense because he should also negotiate things with Beijing. So it's so clear that he only cares about how to suck Taiwan dry as soon as possible instead of Taiwan's safety or Taiwanese interests and so on. So I think it's totally ridiculous for DPP's politicians always cheating Taiwanese people that we can gain more benefits, we can gain more safety from their states by sacrificing A, sacrificing B, sacrificing C. But the most important and the most valuable thing for Taiwan is TSMC. And they just sacrificed it in the beginning of the negotiations. So Taiwan is going to be sucked dry. It's so clear, but I don't know why so many politicians in Taiwan just avoid that fact and keep on cheating the Taiwanese people that we can gain more benefits from the United States. We can gain the commitment for our safety by sacrificing our economic and our so many interests.
I know why.
You know why? Why? Just tell us.
United States is sucking Taiwan dry. Taiwan's politicians are sucking the people dry.
Uh-huh.
Once everything's sucked dry, they go away wherever they have houses in the United States or wherever else.
Yes,
they're
it's
gonna be
just
fine.
like a chain. They can benefit simultaneously, except for people.
It seems to me like the United States government behaves like an abusive husband, and the Taiwan authorities administration acts like an abused wife who still, for some reason, loves her husband, even though the husband is treating her very badly. And then this dynamic, it's very interesting because the DPP treats its voters like a very abusive partner. It's like, okay, if you're not with me, who else is going to take care of you? Who else is going to look after your interests? You are nothing without us. That's the feeling I get from the DPP. I'm not saying the other parties don't have their problems, but right now the DPP is incumbent. So I feel the need to talk about the DPP more.
He's most responsible for that.
Exactly. Now, recently, the director of AIT, so the American Institute in Taiwan, where there's absolutely no CIA whatsoever, Raymond Green, the director, held a meeting with the chairman of the oppositional TPP, Mr. Huang Guochang, as well as 5 legislators from the KMT. Now, usually, the AIT works with whichever party is incumbent. So right now, they should only really be having correspondence with the DPP. And it's very unusual for them to have high-profile meetings with the opposition.
Yes.
So do you think there is any significance to this? And is the U.S. further signaling its disappointment in the troublemaker Lai Ching-te?
First of all, I think the very fact we still understand is either DPP or KMT is puppet controlled by Washington. Yeah, both of them are proxy of the United States in Taiwan.
Every now and then there are people in the KMT who are not puppets, but then the U.S. kind of
Yes,
like
and they,
this Hong Shou-zhu,
they just change it. They cannot even attend the election. Needless to say, winning the campaign. So both of 2 parties in Taiwan are puppets of the United States, and even the 3rd largest party in Taiwan, TPP, 民众党, Taiwan People's Party, they still dare not to disobey the United States will, right? So I think the change of AIT's attitude toward Kuomintang and the DPP is because during the past decade, since the United States adopted what I just mentioned, maximum pressure strategy against Beijing, DPP seemed to be more useful than KMT for the United States at that time, because DPP always keeps an extreme ideology of Taiwan independence and counter-China policy. So it just accords with the United States' needs at that time. And on the other hand, KMT preferred to engage Beijing, to still have stable relations with Beijing and keep balance between the United States and Chinese mainland. And also KMT preferred to ask the United States for some exchange when Taiwan sacrifice our interests. And KMT will say, okay, I sacrifice and you need to pay back something in exchange for us. So it seemed not so useful, not as useful as DPP. But gradually, what I just mentioned, the United States shifted their strategic approach to Beijing, and the situation has changed recently. Lai Ching-te cannot control the majority of legislature in Taiwan, and also he totally failed in so-called great recourse against KMT legislators just recently. So for the United States, it's realistic for them to win the support from the opposition for their sales to Taiwan, especially military sales to Taiwan. And also, Donald Trump dislikes the loser. And Lai Ching-te is just a loser now.
I don't like losers. I like winners.
Yeah, so that's why Lai Ching-te cannot gain the United States' support or preference, just like AIT's attitude toward DPP before. And also, I think AIT's shift of the attitude toward Kuomintang also is a signal of their estimate of the high possibility of the victory by Kuomintang in 2028 Taiwan's campaign.
Yeah, that basically summarizes the situation, in my opinion. And also, I think another error that Lai Ching-te's camp made is back in 2024, Lai Ching-te's camp erroneously believed that Kamala Harris would beat Donald Trump. So through Miss Xiao Mei-qin, Xiao Bi-kim, they cozied up to the Democrats a little bit too much. And Donald Trump's personality is, I don't like people who are friends with my enemies. So I think Donald Trump held a grudge. Not to mention, Lai Ching-te invited Mike Pompeo to Taiwan shortly before the inauguration, and Donald Trump hates Mike Pompeo.
I don't know why they always invited Donald Trump's enemy to Taiwan, and they think it's a good opportunity for them to enhance the relations with the United States. I don't know why, because I think DPP, if they want to become a puppet of the United States, they really need to know who is in power in Washington.
So I think all of this leads to the final question of this segment, which is, what are the qualitative differences between Trump's handling of the Taiwan question and Biden's handling of the situation? And how do these differences impact Taiwan? And specifically, I know you mentioned this a lot already, the shift from maximum pressure on Beijing to more of a reconciliatory
bargaining.
Yeah. What do you make of this situation?
Well, generally speaking, Taiwan is considered to be a chess piece by not only Biden, but also Trump. The qualitative difference is their way how to play the so-called Taiwan card. And for Biden, he tried to strengthen the relations with the allies in Indo-Pacific, including Taiwan. And he made efforts to arm Taiwan to the teeth in his presidency. And he believed that it could be a good deterrence, a successful deterrence against Beijing by arming Taiwan. And he also thought that even Beijing still takes military action against Taiwan, a well-armed Taiwan can let Beijing into a big trap and to weaken Chinese mainland's development and to lead into a big loss for Beijing. That's Biden's opinion. But on the other hand, for Donald Trump, he doesn't believe Taiwan's self-defense ability anymore. He thinks if war breaks out, Taiwan's military can only hold on within several hours and to a week. So it's useless for the United States to combat with Beijing to conquer Chinese mainland.
And right now there are 3 aircraft carriers from the People's Liberation Army. And that's already changing the power balance within the region, especially within the first island chain. I think once the 4th aircraft carrier is launched, then the U.S. does not have much military leverage in the region anymore. We're already seeing troops from Ryukyu or Okinawa being shipped back to Guam.
The 2nd or to the 3rd island chain. Right?
Exactly. So that signals that the U.S. is not very optimistic, regardless of what it says about its control over this region anymore.
Yes, and it's unable to get into so many conflicts simultaneously.
Exactly.
So when there are conflicts in Middle East and at the same time in Russia, Ukraine, the United States is in a big trouble. So that's why Donald Trump shifted his strategy against China. He thinks what I just mentioned for several times, to bargain is better than to combat with Beijing. And Taiwan's authorities should worry not only when the United States weakens their support for Taiwan separatism, but also when the United States encourages Taiwan to cross the red line. Because in the former situation, DPP should worry about being abandoned by Washington. And in the latter situation, they should also worry about Taiwan should fight against Beijing without aid and alone. So since that is so, why don't we negotiate with Beijing by we Chinese ourselves for a peaceful reunification instead of becoming a pawn of the United States?
Exactly. That would be like if the United States told me to go have a fist fight with Guanzhang. I'm not going to do it.
Because, this game will be lost, definitely.
Yeah. So given these shifts in U.S. policy and strategic attitudes, it's no surprise that public opinion over here in Taiwan is beginning to shift as well. And more people are starting to question the long-standing assumptions about our relationship with Washington. So I want to shift our conversation towards how the international situation is impacting the voices on the ground here in Taiwan. I think so many things, even in just the last few months or maybe the last year, have changed. And I mean, for well over a decade, both of us have spoken to our audiences here in Taiwan. I mean, yours is much bigger than mine, about U.S. hegemony. But until more recently, most people just thought we were crazy.
And most of people doubt the United States' ability.
Exactly. I mean, now, 以美论, the theory of questioning the U.S.'s intentions is becoming more and more. I'm not saying it's completely mainstream yet, but it's a sizable portion of the public opinion nowadays. So besides the things that we've talked about so far, what are some current events that have happened in the last couple of years that have led many in Taiwan to reevaluate Taipei's relationship with Washington?
I think recently Taiwanese people doubt not only the United States' intention, but also the United States' ability to so-called defense, to come to Taiwan's defense against Chinese mainland. And there have been at least 3 symbolic events. First, in 2022, Biden's sudden decision to withdraw the U.S. troops from Afghanistan. And that just reminded of some elder generations in Taiwan of similar withdrawals from Vietnam in 1975, and also the similar one from Taiwan in 1979. And also, many people still remember that the United States hit their decision to break off the formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan's authorities in 1978. They hit that decision in secret until only about 7 hours before the United States decided to announce it. So more and more Taiwanese people have become worried about being abandoned by the United States in the near future. And the second one is the Russia-Ukraine war in the next year, 2022. And it absolutely exacerbated Taiwan's people's worry. The term U.S. skepticism, in Chinese 以美论, has been mentioned for more and more times than before in Taiwan's media. And even though the DPP made great efforts to use the Ukraine war as a positive example to teach Taiwanese people that we can also hold on as so long as Ukraine did if Cross-Strait war breaks out. However, the very fact that we see is the United States never comes to Ukraine's war. So the Ukraine's case told us that not only the United States would not come to defense for Ukraine for other countries. And also, we found the fact that Ukraine's President Zelensky, he was even bullied by Donald Trump and his subordinates at the White House just several months ago. And third, there's also a symbolic event for us, that is recently high tariffs imposed by the United States on Taiwan. And that's unthinkable and terrible to most of Taiwan's people, since Taiwan's economy relies heavily on, we say, export orientation. So that's really a big blow to people's livelihood in Taiwan. And even though DPP authorities have complied to almost all the United States demands, Taiwan still got, just like what you mentioned, a big deal, worse than South Korea and Japan. So therefore, more and more people argue that Taiwan should not rely on the United States, but fight against Beijing on our own. I think it's still not correct direction we need to think about it. So what I want to lead people to think is, why should we always fight against Beijing? Why? And we also need to think, is the United States' interests always in accordance with Taiwan's? I think it's very clear, especially in tariff negotiations. It's definitely not. So why can we unify with Beijing to counter the United States demands, the United States, I think, even economic threat to Taiwan? And also, according to the U.S.-China Shanghai Communique in 1972, the United States has claimed its interests in a peaceful settlement of the Taiwan question by the Chinese themselves. So I can also tell our audience and the United States that without the U.S. intervention, Taiwan question will be resolved more easily, quickly, and peacefully.
I think after all of these symbolic events that have happened, what you are saying is more and more people are perhaps beginning to understand that the United States has never viewed us as equal partners or friends, but as a chess piece, like we've talked about today. Would you say this is correct?
Yep, of course. The United States always think of Taiwan as a chess piece, not so-called partner. But most of Taiwan's politicians still keep on cheating Taiwanese people. And it's because Taiwan's politicians and United States politicians can all win by cheating Taiwanese people that the United States can be a protector of Taiwan and can so-called defend Taiwan against Chinese mainland. You know, through promoting this idea, the politicians of both Taiwan and the United States can gain huge benefits. The United States politicians can make their tough anti-Chinese shows and help them get domestic votes and bargain with Beijing. And especially, the United States military-industrial complex gain huge profits from military sales to Taiwan. And besides, Taiwan's politicians can also get support by convincing people that they can keep good relations with the United States and to ensure Taiwan's safety. But however, I think to the common people in Taiwan, recently the situation has been changed. While some of them still keep in confidence with the United States, some have begun to doubt whether the United States' interests can be in accordance with Taiwan's or not. And just like what I said, especially in recent tariff negotiations, the answer seems to be more clear. Taiwan has been demanded to sacrifice TSMC and to increase investments into the United States and to purchase more American products assigned by Trump. But in fact, no one knows if and how it can exchange for tariff reduction. But DPP authorities just comply with the United States all demands nevertheless. So it really triggers people to reevaluate the United States' role in Taiwan's future. And just like what I mentioned, to rethink why we only rely on the United States and why we always keep in fighting against Beijing. So finally, although DPP has still lured people to an assumption that the United States will come to Taiwan's defense if we sacrifice anything the United States demanded, in fact, it's only implied and never be absolute. So in Ukraine's war, we see it very clearly that even Ukraine military has held on more than 3.5 years. The United States has never come to Ukraine's defense. And just let me talk a real story. In 2017, I visited Washington and met a former senior official, the United States official in charge of Taiwan affairs. And he told me that you should hold on within 2 to 3 weeks to let the United States decide whether to support Taiwan's defense or not if war occurs. He said within 2 to 3 weeks. But however, in Ukraine's war, more than 3 years, and the United States still never come.
Could you name who the senior official is? Or?
It's a very famous one, but I just need to hide it in secret.
Okay, you can tell me afterwards.
Okay.
So I think it's very clear that our relationship with Washington is closer to Ukraine's relationship than Israel's, which is very funny because I don't know if you know this, but there are a lot of pro-China commentators in the West who don't quite understand Taiwan's situation, who talk about Taipei as if it's Tel Aviv. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. The relations between Taiwan and United States is like relationship between Ukraine and United States rather than Israel and the United States. Because in Ukraine case, just like what I mentioned for several times, neither Biden nor Trump sent troops to assist Ukraine. And even in Trump's administration, they sent many military aids to Ukraine. But most of Republicans criticize it very fractiously. So after Trump took on his presidency, he just revealed his straight unfriendliness and intolerance to Zelensky and even butted him at the White House. So that's Ukraine case. But in Israel case, both Biden and Trump shows very aggressively and very actively to support Israel against Palestine. So that's different. And as a matter of fact, in the very beginning of Ukraine war, DPP in Taiwan was frightened and scared and worried about Taiwan might be the next one. So at that time, they emphasized for several times that Taiwan will not become Ukraine. At that time, they said that. But gradually, since the war seems to be protracted war, DPP had shifted their attitude, and they began to use Ukraine war as a positive example and to teach Taiwanese people that we can learn after Ukraine. And if we can hold on as long as Ukraine did, we can get support from the United States. So Tsai Ing-wen also used this case for the reason why she decided to extend Taiwan's military compulsory service, extended into 1 year. So in Ukraine case, even though they have held on for more than 3 years, but the United States has never come. And recently, the United States even demanded Zelensky to accept the armistice conditions of ceding territories. So undoubtedly, Taiwan's condition is worse than Ukraine war if war occurs, because we don't have enough strategic depth. And Taiwan's military can only hold on about several hours to a week, or just like what I mentioned, the former official of the United States demanded Taiwan should hold on within 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, even we hold on within 2 to 3 weeks, it's useless because in Ukraine's case, they held on for more than 3 years. And how? What happened?
All of the men are gone.
Yes. So just more people dead in battles, right? So I really want to lead more Taiwanese people to rethink about why we always insist on combating with Beijing or fighting against Chinese mainland, or why should we reject any peaceful proposal for Taiwan's question?
Why fight our own countrymen, our own brothers and sisters for the foreigner?
Yes, we are one family, right? So as a matter of fact, we are all one family. We are all Chinese. Why should we fight with each other? Why we always insist on this ideology? And why we always think our interests can be in accordance with the United States?
And these are questions that more and more people are beginning to ask. So my question is, how do you see the DPP is responding to this? Because to me, it seems like Lai Ching-te's administration is becoming very nervous.
I think Lai Ching-te is a politician. So he only cares about how to seize power, how to defeat the opposition power. Okay, how to revenge on Ke Wen-je for his shame, because Ke Wen-je is originally pro-DPP. He's the creator of the third largest party, DPP, in Taiwan, and he's a former Taipei city mayor. Ke Wen-je originally pro-DPP, but afterwards, he began to rethink about cross-strait relations, and he seemed more pragmatic than Taiwan independence fundamentalists. He thinks what can be beneficial to people is most important, so he can accept any peaceful proposal for Taiwan's future. So that's why he shifted his attitude toward Beijing and then create TPP. So because of Ke Wen-je, he attracted, I think, about half of the original DPP voters.
I go to TPP events and all of the people, I can just tell they were former DPP supporters. You can tell by the way they carry themselves that they were never KMT supporters. Just something about them you can tell.
Yes, so that's really a shame for Lai Ching-te, because of Ke Wen-je, Lai Ching-te lost almost half of the original voters. So that's why Lai Ching-te revenged on Ke Wen-je, and without any concrete proof. But he insisted on accusing Ke Wen-je of corruption, and even put him into detention for more than 1 year.
Yeah, for those who want to understand more about the Ke Wen-je case, I do have an episode on it that I will link in the description below. So why do you think the DPP is working so hard to prevent the spread of 以美论? If they're politicians and that's what the people are thinking, maybe they should just embrace it and work with it and accept the fact that people are questioning America's abilities and intentions. And plus, if the DPP were truly fighting for independence, surely independence means independence from the U.S. as well, right?
Well, so it just proves that DPP is not working for real Taiwan's independence. They just used Taiwan independence as their tool for their struggle for power. By inciting Taiwan's independence ideology, DPP can always defeat the opposition and always accuse the opposition of cooperating with Beijing and label them traitors to Taiwan. So that's their almost at any time when DPP lost in some elections, when DPP faced some poor situation, they would always think of this way to help them gain back their support. And it's also their successful campaign technique to incite Taiwan independence ideology and to make an illusion that it seems to be more and more people embracing such separatist ideals as DPP, because most median voters would be afraid to reveal their real opposition against DPP in the public. That is kind of terror of, maybe you can say, terror of green, because DPP symbol is the color of green. And it seemed like a spiral of silence. Yeah.
That's very true, because I don't know if you know this, but recently I made a song and music video criticizing the Lai Ching-te government. And quite a few people messaged me privately saying, hey, I support your song, I like it, but I'm afraid to click like or share it because I don't want some of my pro-DPP friends to see it and cut ties with me.
Yeah, it's a kind of terror.
And that's just very, I respect them for that. I understand their situation. I've certainly lost some friends over this. And I've never...
You also lost friends?
Former friends have distanced themselves from me because of my views. Whereas I don't really distance myself from people with opposing views on reunification or separatism, because at the end of the day, I know that a lot of these things, people change with the times. And I don't see these people as individuals as my enemies. I see the forces behind them that are leading them to these.
We need to make effort to lead them to think about that.
Yes. That's the way I think of it. But it does seem that the DPP's former strategy of accusing Beijing of everything that goes wrong in Taiwan, playing the Kangzhongbao Tai card, the oppose Beijing and defend Taiwan card, and talking about, we're defending democracy from authoritarianism. I think these propaganda tools are just not working as effectively anymore, as now enough time has passed. The DPP's been back in power for like 9 years now, almost 10, and people's lives aren't getting better, but in fact getting worse. Instead of dealing with the issues of people's livelihood, it's all ideology. What's your take on this?
People tired of them.
Yes.
And I think during 2019 to 2020, especially when Tsai Ing-wen endeavored to her second presidency, protests, or you can say riots, violent riots happening in Hong Kong, helped DPP very much in 2019.
Otherwise, she was going to lose in 2020.
Yes. And after that, when people became more and more tired of those ideologies, and Taiwan independence seems to be not so cool as before, because in the past, Taiwan independence seems to be a romantic dream. And when they shouted the slogans of Taiwan independence, they could enjoy the feeling of rebellions, which young people always like. But when DPP started to force them to do military service, to extend the service into 1 year and even more than 1 year in the near future. Young people feel, well, we need to think seriously about Taiwan independence, about how much we should sacrifice for that. And when, just like what I mentioned before, Lai Qingde pays too much attention to defense resilience, to how to fight against Beijing, and even ask senior high school students if you are willing to assist battlefield if war occurs. That's really frightened most of median voters in Taiwan about the terror of war and unexpected change of the status quo. So that's why so-called 抗中保台, to oppose China and to defend Taiwan's card, not so effective as before. And also, Taiwan's people begin to worry about democracy decline because Lai Qingde always label all of the opposition parties traitors to Taiwan.
Fellow travelers of the Communist Party of China.
Yes. So when he always emphasizes that, in many people's eyes, it will harm Taiwan's freedom of speech and checks and balance in Taiwan's democracy.
I also think on top of all of this that you have said, the fact that the ineffective leadership of the DPP plus the increasing pressure from the U.S., militarily, the defense resilience, as well as economically, such as hollowing out Taiwan, getting TSMC to set up new factories in Arizona. I think it, in the long term, I don't think we're exactly seeing it completely yet. But do you think in the long term it will push popular opinion in Taiwan closer with Beijing?
Of course. In the very beginning, I need to emphasize that so-called anti-authoritarian card has become less effective to Taiwan society because when we see examples such as Trump incited violent riots to occupy the Capitol Hill in 2021, it's just like a very strong overthrow of democratic procedures. And when Nancy Pelosi criticized it very much, it just reminded us of Nancy Pelosi's praise for similar riots in Hong Kong. So that's totally double standard for those Western politicians mentioning so-called democracy. So we doubt the real significance of democracy lost in the United States. And if anti-authoritarianism card is so important, why Donald Trump just compel Zelensky to accept the armistice condition of ceding territory? So it's very clear that so-called democracy or anti-authoritarianism card not useful and not so important for the United States. What the United States really cares is their own interests. That's the fact. And I remembered Lin Feifan, the Deputy Secretary General of Taiwan's National Security Council. He insisted that anyone in Taiwan cannot be skeptical about the United States. If you are skeptical about the United States, you are infiltrated by Beijing. You are helpers, you are followers of the Chinese Communist Party. But why can we not be skeptical about the United States? And in recent tariff negotiations, when Donald Trump imposed so high tariff on Taiwan, Taiwan has no choice but to embrace the almost only important market, that is Chinese mainland. That's the United States, not Chinese Communist Party, forced Taiwan to do that. So the very fact is the United States is who forced Taiwan to be closer to Beijing.
Yes. Now that we've talked about the impact of Washington's policies on Taipei as well as shifting opinions on the ground here in Taiwan, I want to connect all of this with your own political development and your personal development, because I think your background, considering your political views, or your political views considering your background, is quite unique over here. And I know now we can say that more and more people are starting to realize that Taiwan separatism is a dead end and that the U.S. isn't a dependable friend. And it's also becoming less taboo for people like us to proudly say we are Chinese people. But with you, when I first became aware of you all the way back in 2014, you were already vocal about being Chinese. You stood opposed to the Sunflower Movement, and you've always been very outspoken against separatist indoctrination ever since I've been made aware of you, especially the kind, that comes through separatist indoctrination that comes through historical revisionism. And I think your perspective is especially interesting because you were born in 1987. If you were born in 1967, I would not be surprised because back then everybody said they were Chinese. You grew up during a time when being Chinese was still the mainstream self-identity. But then your generation, along with those a little bit older and younger, ended up becoming the first wave or the guinea pigs of the historical revisionist curriculum. A lot of them became some of the most active ideological foot soldiers of the DPP because of this education. But despite growing up in such an environment, you pushed back, especially at a time when holding your positions wasn't exactly popular among your peers. And even though you grew up during the same era and the same environment as those Taiwan separatists. So I want to get into your political development a little bit, how you came to your current views and how you've maintained them in an environment that was, at least for a while, moving in the opposite direction. So first off, can you share a bit about your upbringing and what experiences shaped your decision to publicly and proudly identify as Chinese, especially during a time when it was not that popular to do so?
Yes, first of all, I need to say, if I just identify myself as a Chinese, it's not so unusual, but I still insist on becoming a fighter, a promoter for unification in public. It's really a little bit weird in Taiwan, especially for my generation. But when I was a child, during early 1990s, there were many TV dramas made by Taiwanese producers and played Asian Chinese stories and also filmed in Chinese mainland during 1990s. For example, 新白娘子传奇. I don't know, have you ever watched that?
I think it's a little bit before my time. I was born in 93.
Before your time, okay.
So when I was 5, my parents were watching 还珠格格.
Oh, okay. I watched 还珠格格 about my 12. So, 新白娘子传奇 was filmed and premiered in Taiwan about 1992. At that time, I was about 6 years old. 新白娘子传奇, The New Legend of Madame Whitesnake, which plays an Asian Chinese legend, Asian Chinese story. And it was really part of childhood memory for many 1980s generation in both Taiwan and the Chinese mainland. So through watching these dramas, I identify myself as a Chinese unconsciously because those dramas playing Asian Chinese stories, and those dramas were produced by Taiwanese ourselves. So I would think, okay, Taiwanese are Chinese, and those stories are my stories. Those stories are stories passed by from my ancestors of my nation. So I identify myself as a Chinese unconsciously. But in terms of politics, I need to trace back to the beginning of my teenager's times. I used to watch the TV shows hosted by Li Ao. I know you also knew that, right?
李敖有话说。
Yeah, but before you, I watched 李敖笑傲江湖 and 李敖秘密书房。李敖语妙天下 is afterwards. Yeah, so I watched 李敖before you because I'm older than you, right? So I used to watch his political TV shows since 1999. And, Li Ao is a pretty famous and I think almost the most influential critic in Taiwan since 1990s. And he moved to Taiwan from Chinese mainland when he was very young.
14.
Yeah, when he was 14, since 1949, because of the Chinese Civil War. And he became a political prisoner for opposition to Kuomintang's authoritarian rule during 1970s.
And then he became one of the most vocal critics of the DPP and Taiwan separatism.
Yeah.
His criticism's interesting, though, because his angle is, you guys aren't real. You guys don't have the courage to go through with it. It's all fake.
Yes.
You guys are liars.
Yeah, and I was ever a prisoner, right? A prisoner fighting against Kuomintang's authoritarian rule, for Li Ao. So I think since 1990s until his death in 2018, he kept fighting against Taiwanese separatism. Yes. Yeah, and he opposed DPP. So by listening to his discourse, I have understood both sides of Taiwan Strait belong to China, and the very fact that almost all politicians in Taiwan are liars, for they always claim that Taiwan is an independent country, but which is falsely, and which is not the fact, not only historically, culturally, but also legally, because according to the legal system in both of Chinese mainland and Taiwan, both of us think of Taiwan as part of China's territory.
Just a different definition of China, but still China nonetheless.
Yes, just different representations of China. Taiwan's Republic of China and Chinese mainland People's Republic of China. But there's still one China and two parts of China, Chinese mainland and Taiwan. So at that time, I found that all politicians are liars. And it's simply so clear why they always lied, why they always cheated to the Taiwanese people. And finally, I have studied more and more about Taiwan history when I grew up. I have realized that many sorrowful sufferings of Taiwan, usually mentioned by DPP, such as Japanese colonial rule or the White Terror during Kuomintang's authoritarian rule, those sufferings almost resulted from imperialist invasion into China and resulted from the power of China's fall since the Opium War in 1840. So I really understand Taiwan's history and concern about Taiwan's future. So I know more about Taiwan's past, and Taiwan's future will be connected with Chinese rejuvenation in the near future. And that will be a charming and a wonderful chance for Taiwan's future generations.
I think that's very interesting because from the cultural standpoint, I didn't watch the drama that you mentioned because that was before my time. Because I am not yet an old man. I'm just kidding. But similarly, I watched a lot of Hong Kong cinema when I was growing up. And back then, Hong Kong actors and Taiwan actors, they collaborated a lot. A lot of the big movies had Taiwan presence in them. One of them, I think, that had a huge impact on me was Huang Fei-hong, Once Upon a Time in China by Jet Li.
Yeah, I also watched that during 1990s, right?
Yes, early 90s.
Yeah, early 1990s.
The whole message of it was just the trials and tribulations that the Chinese people went through during some of the most difficult times of the Chinese people's history.
And you can find patriotism in those films, especially Chinese pursuit for marginalization and to expel those aggressors.
Yes. I think that was one of the main events in my childhood, and also just watching a lot of Chinese media that just made me connect with it. Also just being told by my parents, you're Chinese, we're Chinese. And
so you watched them in America?
Yes.
Okay. So you were brought up in the United States, right?
Yes. But at home, our television, we had satellite that received TV channels from Taiwan.
Oh, okay.
And later on, even the mainland. So like not 24/7, but most of the time when the TV was on, it was Chinese media. So at school, like some people would be talking about MTV and all that stuff, and I just had no idea because at home I was watching all this Chinese stuff,
programs.
Yes. So then I was the weird kid.
And you learned Chinese from them.
Yeah, and just speaking Chinese at home, and also being in Taiwan almost every summer. So I always had that sort of connection. I feel very fortunate, and I think that sort of cultural immersion really solidified my Chinese identity. And one of the questions I asked early on was, okay, even if we don't like Beijing, the government, why does that mean we should just become separate and give up such a vast land where our history was built, where our ancestors came from, where it's no matter what is going to have an impactful and powerful future? My first time traveling to the mainland, it was 2005.
2005.
I was 12 years old.
My first time to Chinese mainland was about 6 years old, 1992.
Oh, wow. So you've seen what?
Before 1992 consensus.
2005 to now, like the mainland's changed a lot. But what you've seen, it's an even greater change.
Yeah.
Because even in 2005, I'm going to be honest, when I went to the mainland, I felt there's a bright future here, but it's still a little bit economically behind. But for some reason, I don't know why. And plus, everyone was nice to me. But I just felt there's going to be a great future. I just didn't expect the great future to come this quickly.
Yep, so quickly, beyond our imagination.
Yeah. Like right now, what we see on the mainland now, I thought would be the reality in maybe like 2040. And then I went again in 2007 to more places with my mom, and I just really had this affinity. I just felt I'm not in a different country from Taiwan. It's just a different part of the same country. That's what it felt like to me.
So that's why I will be more grateful to those our ancestors, especially during those difficult times, to combat with aggressors and sacrifice themselves. Because when China is so poor, and when China was so poor and in that bad situation, they still identify themselves as a Chinese. So today, when China grows prosperously and improves so much, why don't we identify ourselves as a Chinese? That is an origin of our culture, of our history.
Exactly. Now, many in your generation went through the whole De-Sinicization process, the 去中国化 curriculum, and embraced the Taiwan-only identity, or as Li Denghui called it, 台湾主体意识, Taiwan-centered consciousness. Firstly, as somebody who lived through this transition, could you briefly talk about how it was carried out? And secondly, what was different about your experience, like everyone else, not everyone else, a lot of other people just bought into it, but you've resisted it. And was there a turning point that made you push back? I mean, in my case, it was easy because I wasn't educated here, so I never received a separatist or De-Sinicization education. My parents just told me, you're Chinese, we're Chinese. And my dad's just like, Taiwan separatism is bad.
Okay. Well, first of all, as I have opposed Taiwan independence since my teen age, I identified myself as a supporter of Kuomintang, KMT, because there were almost only two parties you can choose, pen blue or pen green, KMT or DPP. So when I was young, I recognized myself as a supporter for KMT. However, I was disappointed gradually with their cowardice of revealing their Chinese identity. And what's worse, during Ma Ying-jeou's authorities in 2008 to 2016, KMT's authorities refused to correct separatist education, to correct pro-separatism textbooks.
But you know what's funny? Even though they didn't do that, the DPP still called them Beijing's puppets.
It still call them traitors to Taiwan. Okay, so and during Ma Ying-jeou's times, he insisted an policy that no reunification, no independence, and no force. But that's totally a lie because the status quo can never be remained and always changing at all times. So therefore, I joined another minor party in Taiwan whose name is Xingdang,
the new party.
Yeah.
It was the breakoff of the KMT in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Back during,
yeah.
They're like the faction, one of the factions that did not like Li Donghui.
Yeah, so split from Kuomintang in 1990s, and who insists on Chinese national identity and support for Chinese reunification. And I served as a spokesperson for the new party since 2012 until 2020. And during the period of the time, I learned a lot how to debate against Taiwan separatism and experienced in many political struggles for that. So in process of the political struggle, I have gradually thought of myself as a reunification fighter rather than supporter. And now I work as a cyber influencer. According to my interaction with Taiwan's people, their resistance to reunification resulted from not only a misconception of history, but also misunderstanding of Chinese mainland. So I still need to work harder to let them know the fact. And when I appeared to the public to oppose the Sunflower Movement in 2014, the DPP supporters not only scoffed at me,
Scoffed at your singing.
Yeah, butted me, make joke of me, and also they reported falsely to the Facebook that the account was not used by the real Wang Ping-chung. They reported falsely that the account was not used by myself. So my account had been deactivated for several times. So it's really annoying for me at that time. But still, I thought of it as a good opportunity for me to, many TV political shows at that time invited me to play the role of the opposition against Sunflower Movement because Kuomintang dared not to do that. So I played that role. So I thought of it as my good opportunity to let me promote my ideals to the public. Okay. But the second experience was more difficult for me to overcome. That occurred in December 2017 when I was investigated for sedition, on on a winter morning, I think about only 6 o'clock in 2017, a crew of investigators suddenly appeared at the door of my house. Yeah, about 5 men. And then they asked me to open the door for an investigation into national security. You know, when I heard of national security, I have a hunch that I may be sent into jail or into detention secretly. So the only way for me to avoid that, to help myself, was to let the public know what happened. So I decided at once, I have no choice but to make decision at once to start live streaming on my Facebook. So I camera them, and because there are 2 doors before they enter my house, the inner door opened and the external one, the external door with some guardrails. So I could camera them and see them within those rails. So I started to camera them and live streaming on my Facebook. They didn't know at that time. They didn't know that is live streaming. They just knew I camera, but they didn't know that was live streaming. So when after they forced to open the door and just took away my cell phone, what's happening is to be known by the media. So about half an hour later, there were many reporters crowded just downstairs at my house. And when I was forced to be brought by those investigators, they forced me to go with them to investigation stations. And I just knew not only me, but also my parents, my colleagues investigated and raided simultaneously.
All of them at once, same day?
The same day.
Wow.
Yeah, at the same time.
What was I know they were saying it's sedition, but what happened during those weeks that led them to make their move, like at that point?
I think there are some reasons for them. First, they expanded and changed the definition of mainland Chinese spies. In the past time, we would think we would have legal troubles only if we touched those classified intelligence. Yes. But afterwards, they used our case to let Taiwan society know you will risk being investigated or even prosecuted, not only touching classified intelligence, but also if you promote reunification, if you do many exchange activities with Beijing, you will also risk becoming investigated or even prosecuted, trapped into a lawsuit. So the lawsuit, in my case, lasted more than 4 years.
And during those 4 years, because your current wife, who was your girlfriend at the time, was living on the mainland, so for 4 years you couldn't see her.
I couldn't meet my fiancée at that time.
Oh,
because,
fiancée.
Yeah, because my girlfriend at that time, and now my wife, she's a Chinese mainland, and she could not get entrance permission to Taiwan. And I could not leave Taiwan because I suffered a restriction on leaving Taiwan. So I could not go anywhere, but only in the island of Taiwan. So I could not meet my fiancée. And fortunately, we got married in 2022 when I at last won the lawsuit and overcome it and got the final acquittal of that.
It's a very it's sad you had to go through all that, but I'm very happy that you emerged from that victorious and that your now wife stayed with you all of this time.
Yeah. So even I won the lawsuit and I was declared innocent in every instance of trial, I still suffered from restriction on leaving Taiwan. But fortunately, I have never been sent to jail. I think just because of live streaming, because I started to live stream at once to let the public know what's happening. So many, at that time, many celebrities criticized this case very much. They thought that's just like a beginning of Terror of White. Before, we called Terror of White
White terror.
to criticize Kuomintang's authoritarian rule, and now it's changed because
Green terror.
Terror of Green, DPP becomes another authoritarian government in Taiwan.
And this is interesting because 2017, that was before the DPP passed the Anti-Infiltration Act.
Yeah, in 2017, that's the second year of DPP's ruling period after Tsai Ing-wen became a president, only 1 year.
So they were making moves already back then, even under Tsai Ing-wen. Despite her clean image, she was still doing some of the things that now we criticize Lai Ching-te of doing.
Yep. And I think the second reason why they did that is to undermine our promotion of revocation. Because I think during that time, before we were investigated, we made great efforts to promote revocation. And we attracted many young people to rethink about reunification versus independence, especially those young people on campus. So that seems to be a big threat to DPP, because DPP should always control those young people by their argument of Taiwan independence. So I think that's the second reason why they investigated us in 2017. They should stop our promotion. So I think if we had not been investigated, we would have successfully more promoted reunification and lead Taiwanese people to think about that.
But I think now is still a better time than ever to do the same thing. And the fact that they went at you, I feel like now you are even more of a fighter than you were before, just by seeing how despicable the opposition is. And when you're talking about the fight against separatist propaganda, my question to you is, what, in your view, are the biggest historical distortions that have been pushed in textbooks or public discourse, and how do they impact cross-strait relations today, as well as how the people of Taiwan identify themselves?
Maybe I can introduce what the textbook in Taiwan educated Chinese history. When I was in elementary school, the education of Taiwan history was included in the framework of Chinese history. So we thought it unconsciously. Taiwan is part of China, and Taiwanese history is included in Chinese history. But after entering junior high school, about 2000, Taiwan history was separated from Chinese history education in textbooks. So we were taught Taiwan history before Chinese history. They were separated with each other. So many generations and those younger than ours gradually thought Taiwan is an originally separated country from China. They will think Taiwan is originally an independent country, and there's nothing to do with China in their consumption. That is misconcept.
I think we talked about it last time when we met, how now they try to frame the Qing dynasty as, just one out of a series of many foreign or external rulers.
Yep, because, since 2016, when Tsai Ing-wen took on her presidency, she demanded the education system to eliminate Chinese history education. So in my times, Taiwan's history and Chinese history were just separated from each other, but we still have Chinese history education in the next year of high school. But Tsai Ing-wen just eliminated education of Chinese history.
So now it's Taiwan history, East Asian history, and world history.
East Asia history, yeah. So Chinese history has been fragmented into Asia East history. So for my generation and those older generations, we will have a concept, we will have an understanding of Chinese history that there are many dynasties. There are many dynasties within 5,000 years in Chinese history, and all of them share with the same idea or the same concept of great unity, of great unification as a Chinese nation. So all of them pursue to create a unified Chinese empire, Chinese nation. So for my generation and older generations, we know that we have that understanding, so we can easily understand why Beijing cannot give up reunification. So whoever in power of China will insist on reunification because that's part of we Chinese culture, rooted in Chinese culture. But today's young people after 2016, they don't have education of Chinese history. So for example, when I read those Chinese Asian poems, when I understood knew some Chinese poets, we think of them as our ancestors in my nation. Yes. Yeah, but for those younger Taiwanese generations, they just think of them as the same as those foreigners.
So like Li Bai is the same as Shakespeare to them.
Yep. Just like those Westerners, European poets, they don't have special feelings toward them. But for me, that's my origin of my culture, and I inherited the legacy from them. So that's total different feeling. And also, for example, when I was in college about 2007, I brought my classmates to take a trip in Beijing. And when we were in Beijing's Hutong, Alice, they saw many old men playing Chinese traditional instruments, and they shouted, "Oh, so Chinese, so Chinese!" The feeling is just like a foreigner watching exotic things.
It's funny because I learned how to play the erhu over here in Taiwan, not on the mainland.
Yes, and I think it's just my culture.
Yeah.
And I think it's also my.
Yeah.
It's also tradition of my.
It is.
Yeah, but those classmates, they shouted, "Oh, so Chinese, 好中国!" Just like a foreigner, like a European or American visiting another country and watching some exotic things. So it really shocked me. So that is many and many Taiwanese generations lost Chinese identity. Yes. Even not only politically, but even culturally. So that's a very terrible thing. It's very horrifying because if we want to deal with cross-strait relations, if we want to keep stable cross-strait relations
the minimum framework
and to resolve Taiwan's question, to get a peaceful solution for Chinese civil war since 1949 until now, if we still have the same sense of Chinese culture, the same sense of national identity, it will be easily resolved. But without that, the problem, the question will be more complex and difficult to resolve. If we can resolve it peacefully, war will occur. But terribly, most of Taiwan people today, they even do not think cross-strait relations is important because they have advocated that Taiwan is originally independent from China. They think Taiwan has been separated from China successfully. And even they think there's nothing to do with China. So any proposal from Beijing for peaceful unification will be unthinkable, unreasonable for those Taiwan people. So that will be more complex and troublesome.
Yeah, and what's really horrifying to me is you have so many people who don't even realize Hokkien or Minanhua is a Chinese language.
Yep.
They think that it was born in Taiwan and they're surprised. They're like, wait,
For
people in
example,
Xiamen-
my cousin ever asked my aunt a question. Are we offsprings of Fujian people? Is Minanhua Taiwanese dialects resulted from China? They will have this problem. For me, that's just like a common sense, but they don't know that, and they will be frightened when they know the fact first time.
Wow. Yeah, as a child, I was just told this language was brought over to Taiwan by the early migrants from southern Fujian. No question
Yes.
about it.
Yeah, my ancestors moved from Chinese mainland from Fujian about 300 years ago.
Ming Dynasty, right?
Yes.
Wow. Because my mom's side came in the Qing Dynasty.
Yeah.
So it's funny. So like my mom's
My
side of the family.
ancestors came to Taiwan about the mid 17th century.
So my mom's ancestors to your ancestors were 外省人, even though both are considered 本省人 today.
Yeah, if your family moved to Taiwan after 1949, they will call you 外省人, means mainland Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in fact, all of us mainland Chinese before.
Except for the indigenous population. No, but even the indigenous population, they came to what is now the island back when there wasn't a Taiwan Strait. They came by land.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
So no, it's interesting because now these people talk about Taiwan. Oh, we're equal parts. Taiwanese culture is a sum total of Chinese culture, Dutch culture, Spanish culture, Japanese culture, and just because these different empires or foreign powers have ruled Taiwan in the past, but it's like, what about the people? It's not just a piece of bare land. It's the people on the island. And the fact of the matter is, Taiwan, as we know it today, was built up by people who belong to Chinese civilization, who built up Taiwan as a part of Chinese civilization. The Spanish, when they landed in northern Taiwan, they couldn't even collect taxes. How much influence do they have? Does anyone in Taiwan, does any sizable portion of Taiwan's population today speak Spanish or Dutch? No. Zheng Chenggong kicked out the Dutch, and much more people came to Taiwan after the Dutch left than before.
And how the society, how today's Taiwan society resulted from Chinese immigrants, and because Chinese rule over Taiwan, so we will have those bureaucratic system and those formation of so-called Taiwan society. So if we really talk about Taiwan history should be based on people's economic, cultural, political system, not only based on those so-called Taiwan's animals or just the island of Taiwan itself. We need to find out the chronicle development of people here, right? And also, I've heard of a very ridiculous comparison by some Taiwan independence supporters. They said Taiwan is just like a woman who made up with many men, including span, Dutch, Japan, America, and China. And all of these men gave some origins to me, to Taiwan. So Taiwan has many branches of culture, many elements. So China is only one part of Taiwan's culture. Very ridiculous.
It's not just it's disgusting. It's
They compare
disgusting. It's
Taiwan
undignified.
to a woman, you know.
But even then, talking about a woman like that is very undignified.
And you know, in this case, they just justify Japanese colonial period in Taiwan, right?
Yes.
They gave legitimacy to Japanese colonial administration.
It's no longer called the era of Japanese occupation. It's called the era of Japanese administration.
Yeah.
Instead of 日据时代.
Before we will call it Japanese occupation.
Yeah, 日据时代.
Yeah. But now they call it Japanese administration.
日治时代.
To justify Japanese colonial rule. And if they can justify Japanese colonial rule, so they surrender to whose power is enough.
What kind of independence is that?
So if Beijing have enough ability to take over Taiwan militarily by force, according to this logic, they can also accept, right? Because they compare Taiwan to a woman, and so many men making love with me. Okay, you are great enough. Your power is enough, so you can take over me, just like that, right? But for me, for reunification promoters like me, I want to achieve a peaceful negotiation with Beijing to talk about how to handle the system before the system after reunification.
Yeah.
So that's different.
I don't see it as, this is a very powerful foreign entity that's coming into me, or I don't think of it like that. I think two separated parts of a single whole coming back together.
We are one family.
Yeah.
So there is no problem about who win, who lose. Mm-hmm. It's just like one family separated because of civil war. Now talk about how to reunify.
Exactly.
How to achieve a good reunification and make Taiwanese people can really not only benefit from reunification economically, but also get a real dignity in the future.
So this is the cultural aspect of it, and you're talking about the national dignity and the reunification of family and all of that, which I agree with. Mm-hmm. Now, I think one of the biggest questions that some people who are on the fence have is they think reunification with the between Taiwan and the mainland would undermine Taiwan's prosperity or democracy. So how do you address the misconceptions that love for China and love for Taiwan are mutually exclusive?
Well, they will think love for Taiwan and love for China exclusive with each other because of misunderstanding of history and the fact of Chinese mainland. After reunification, we can profit economically first, because especially after recent tariff negotiations with the United States, the United States government just imposed high tariff upon Taiwan and just forced Taiwan to have no choice but to embrace our most important market, Chinese mainland. So that is first. And the second, after reunification, we can get real dignity. If, for example, in case of Japanese coast guards compelling Taiwan's fishermen to leave Taiwanese traditional fishery, which is near to Japan. If we have a backup from Beijing, we don't need to surrender to Japanese coast guards, and they will dare not to compel Taiwanese fishermen. And also, after reunification, we don't need so much military spending because Beijing can protect our national safety because we are one family, we are one nation. And we don't need to think over how to fight against Beijing and be compelled by the United States to sacrifice almost anything.
I think what you're saying is our relationship with Beijing is there's many provinces on the mainland. We are one province, and all of us together, we're siblings, and we speak as equals within one family instead of, and then together we are much stronger against outsiders who don't have our best interests.
Yeah. I think, first of all, Taiwan and Chinese mainland are both territory of China. So reunification is absolutely the target for anyone who rules China. If we cannot resolve this question peacefully, war will be difficult be avoided. If we really love Taiwan, we should know both Taiwan's economy and safety depend on Chinese mainland. Even if many Taiwanese politicians always say we need to fight against Beijing in order to protect so-called Taiwan's value, I always think we need to pay more attention to what Taiwan's value really means. So I prefer to say people's value. People's value prioritizing so-called Taiwan's value because politicians always modify their selfishness in the name of Taiwan. And many politicians just modify their selfishness in the name of Taiwan. So I prefer to say people's value rather than Taiwan's value. For Taiwan should belong not to those politicians, but the people, indeed. So therefore, we need peace, stability, and prosperity under Chinese mainland's protection. So just like what I mentioned, Japanese coast guards will dare not to arrest Taiwanese fishermen when they enter Taiwanese traditional fishery close to Japan. And we should not surrender to the United States when Trump imposes so high tariffs on Taiwan. Besides, Taiwan's young people should not do military compulsory service because Chinese mainland can defend for us. And we can also save a huge amount of military spendings and improve our livelihood, our economy, public infrastructure instead. And furthermore, in consideration of Taiwan's unique political and economical system, Beijing has proposed one state, one country, two systems for that. So Taiwan can also enjoy a special autonomy over some political and economic systems. And I think it will be higher, the degree of autonomy will be higher than Hong Kong. So there will be beneficial for all common people in Taiwan, but except those politicians, those in power, so-called vested interest groups.
Yes. So how do you think all of this damage done by historical revisionism can be corrected? And I believe it can be corrected.
Well, I feel pessimistic about that.
Really?
Yeah, maybe you can say pop culture can have a big impact on young guys. So with growing of mainland Chinese power, there are more and more programs, dramas, or convenient apps, or so on. Those pop culture can affect Taiwanese people. I agree with that, but I still think it cannot substitute the role of formal education.
Yes.
They cannot substitute the role of main media. For example, 馆长, a cyber influencer who was originally pro DPP and shifted his political stance to TPP to 柯文哲 afterwards. He began to rethink about independence versus reunification. And he began to make many programs, many films in Chinese mainland. He introduced some modern cities in mainland China to most of Taiwanese young guys by his live streaming films. So, correctly, more and more Taiwanese young people know improvements of Chinese mainland. But it's still different between understanding Chinese mainland's improvements from identifying themselves as a Chinese. So I still think pop culture can provide more intelligence, more information about Chinese mainland's improvements, especially in terms of economic opportunities, technique, whatever. But it still cannot substitute the impact of the mainstream media and textbooks. And still, the DPP controls textbooks and the mainstream media. So, for example, 中天,
Yes.
中天 News Agency, CTI News Agency in Taiwan. It introduces Chinese mainland in a positive way, and it criticizes DPP. So, CTI News Agency
Lost their
was
broadcasting
forced-
license.
Yeah, was forced to go off air on Taiwan's cable TV system in 2020.
Yeah. And I think an important part of it is not just understanding the mainland, but re-understanding Taiwan's own history and understanding it as a part of broader Chinese civilization, Chinese history. I think that's because everybody living in Taiwan loves Taiwan. Who doesn't love Taiwan, right? It's the home. It's where you're emotionally connected to. If you can connect this place you call home to a broader Chinese civilization, that is, I think, most people's gateway into appreciating Chinese culture and identifying themselves as part of Chinese civilization and not just somebody who's tangentially related.
Yes, it's also a confusion for me when I was about 17 years old during 2003 to 2005. Because at that time, Chen Shui-bian served as a Taiwanese president, and he started to pursue for his second presidency by inciting Taiwan independence fiercely. So at that time, Taiwan's identity seemed to be totally exclusive from China's identity. So anyone in Taiwan, you should choose only one. You identified yourself as a Taiwanese, so you cannot identify as a Chinese. It's a kind of dilemma at that time. So for me, my ancestors came to Taiwan 300 years ago. We've been inhabitants in Taiwan for 300 years. So it's really troublesome for me how to handle that dilemma. It seems to be weird if I say I'm Taiwanese and I'm absolutely also Chinese. It seems to be weird at that time. So for that, for me to overcome that dilemma, that confusion, I learned a lot. I really studied hard about Taiwan history. And finally, I understood that those sorrowful sufferings of Taiwan, Japanese, Korean, colonial rule, and Kuomintang's authoritarian rules in Taiwan resulted from China's power's fall since 1840s, since the Opium War. So it's really a difficult time for me to overcome that confusion. I think also some people in Taiwan would have that kind of confusion because DPP politicians always force you to choose Taiwanese or Chinese. And if you identify yourself as a Chinese, it seems like you're a traitor to Taiwan. So that's really a misunderstanding of history. But they create that misconception through education, through the promotion by the media.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of even Westerners who say they are pro-China fall into this framework. If you uphold the one China policy, if you really believe in reunification, then you need to address the people of Taiwan as fellow Chinese compatriots. And this sort of divisive tactics, unfortunately, has spilled over, especially in the international arena, where people have even less of a context to work with regarding Taiwan. Like, where do you even begin to understand Taiwan? You know, it's very difficult if you aren't from the island or are not Chinese.
Yep, and for those politicians, they always cheated Taiwanese people that Taiwan has been already successfully separated from China, or Taiwan is originally an independent country. They always say that, but they dare not to announce Taiwan independence formally. They dare not to declare Taiwan independence legally. So if you dare not to do that, we need to face the fact. We need to face the Taiwan question and how to resolve it, how to resolve this political confrontation between two sides of Cross-Strait and to avoid wars, right? I think that is obligation for every politician in Taiwan. But unfortunately, in order to seize power, they always disguise, they always promote themselves in the name of Taiwan separatism and modify Taiwan separatism in we maintain the status quo. But what the status quo is two sides of the Taiwan Strait still belong to one China's territory. So either Taiwan or Beijing's legal system still think of Taiwan as part of China. Not only Beijing's, but also today's the Constitution of the Republic of China in Taiwan. So even DPP and KMT, when they reject reunification with Beijing, they still say, oh, we support Republic of China. They promote Taiwan separatism in the name of Republic of China. They did not to suspend it.
And the funny thing is, for those of you who don't know, if you read the laws of the Republic of China, whether it's the Constitution or the additional articles or the Cross-Strait Act, it says very clearly that it is not a separate government for a separate Taiwan. It considers itself a Chinese government,
Yep.
and that Taiwan is a part of China.
Yes. But they say they are not Chinese.
Yeah, which is really funny because the name is Republic of China. If
yep.
you are a citizen of the Republic of China, does that not make you Chinese?
So you are Chinese. But they say, oh, we are Taiwanese. Taiwan is a separated country in the name of Republic of China.
I tell them,
so that's totally a lie, right?
衙门只认公文. Like
Yeah.
if you go to court, can you say, okay, my legal name is this, but judge, could you please call me this other name? I prefer. Don't call me the Republic of China. Call me Taiwan.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, change your legal name to Taiwan. Declare
Yeah,
Taiwan
or you
independence.
just suspend it, right? You
Yeah.
suspend it, you throw it away, and declare Taiwan independence formally. But they dare not to do that. So this was understood by me when I was only about 12 years old. So I understood all of the politicians are lying. So what they're saying is different, totally different from our legal system. So about my teenage times, I understood that very well. And I really want to let more Taiwanese people know that. So we still need to face the fact and how to resolve the political confrontation between two sides to avoid wars. That's my duty. And I think it's also a duty for those main political parties in Taiwan. Unfortunately, they did not to carry on, to take on that duty.
If they're not taking it on, then it's up to people like us to help push them into doing it.
Yeah.
And I think on that note, that's everything I have for discussion today. Are there any last words you would like to tell our friends in the audience?
Well, I think there are some misunderstandings usually mentioned by some international media, so maybe I can make it more clear. The first is that Taiwan has been separated from China. I always heard of many people thinking of that. They think Taiwan has been separated from China successfully. But according to not only Chinese mainland, but also Taiwan's legal system, Taiwan is part of Chinese territory. So the fact is we've not separated legally, although reunification has not been achieved yet.
It's an internal split.
Yes. And the second one is, I think some international friends will think that Beijing is eager to reunify Taiwan in a short time, or with a deadline for that. So they always think Beijing is the one who is harming, who is changing the status quo, right? But however, the real threat to peace is DPP's attempt to cross the red line, to change the status quo, and to challenge the legal system of one China for several times. In addition, the United States used to adopt what I just mentioned for several times, maximum pressure strategy against Beijing. So they preferred Taiwanese separatism and used it as a tool. So the United States had often encouraged DPP to challenge the red line for their anti-China strategy. So the real threats to peace are DPP's separatism and the United States' ambition, not Beijing.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And for our audience who want to follow more of your work, where can they follow you? I know all of your work is in Chinese, but if you ever need some of your works translated into English or to look over translations, don't be a stranger. You can always reach out to me. I think your message needs to be heard by more people.
Yeah.
So where can our audience follow you? I know you are on YouTube.
YouTube and Facebook. YouTube Wang Ping-chung.
I'll put a link in the bio to his YouTube channel and your Facebook. I guess if you're on Weibo, you can follow him there as well, but I doubt most of my viewers are on Weibo. I'll still put a link though.
Some mainland Chinese social media, Weibo and 今日头条 and so on. Yeah.
Are you on 小红书?
No, I still have not yet. Because I think maybe 小红书 it's suitable for pop culture.
Yeah, it's more pop culture.
Not political issues.
It was that way, but then earlier this year, a bunch of foreigners got onto Xiaohongshu, and then it became kind of political because they didn't know how to deal with this influx of foreigners talking about America or whatever. But I think overall, it's not
a very good conversation.
Yeah.
Those from United States and those in China, they share some information, maybe about pop culture or anything.
Or just life.
Daily life.
Some of it goes into politics.
Oh, really?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which was interesting.
So I can pay more attention to that.
Yeah, maybe go on, make an account.
Yeah.
So, Bingzhong Xiong, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show to talk about Taiwan, both in the broader context of world politics, as well as the internal politics, as well as about yourself. And I want you to know that you are always welcome back onto the show. And like I said, if there's anything going on in Taiwan that you would like me to relay to my audience, please don't be a stranger. You have my contact information. You can message or call me at any time.
Yep. This is really my pleasure to be here to talk with you. And also hope I can make more efforts to let my fellows understand more about the real cross-strait relations.
Yes. And to my audience, Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you all learned a thing or two from our conversation. I know with Mr. Wang Ping-chung's wealth of knowledge, there's a lot that you have probably learned. If you want more insights on Taiwan, the rest of China, and beyond, not typically covered in mainstream media, be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube and follow me on social media. The links are all in the bio. If you got any questions about anything discussed in this episode or anything else, drop a comment on YouTube or send me an email at straighttalk@xiangyu.tw. If you want to support my work, sharing with potentially interested friends and subscribing on YouTube or your podcast app, hitting like, dropping comments, all of this helps push the show in the algorithm. If you'd like to take it a step further, you can become a channel member on YouTube, become a patron on Patreon, or you can make a one-time donation through the links in the show notes. Thank you all once again for listening, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Goodbye.
收工了。电池剩5%，刚好。